Do you sometimes lose focus when reading and have to backtrack an entire paragraph? Well, I know why this is happening to you, and in today's video, I'm going to tell you why you struggle to read, and I'll also give you a method that will 100% solve this problem for good. And to prove this works, whenever I pull this off, I'm able to read without having to backtrack. And I used to have the worst focus ever when reading, but when I used this method, I gained so much value from just 20 minutes of reading. So what's causing you to struggle when reading? Here's a story. So 2022 is coming to an end, and I'm waiting for class to finish. But then my teacher starts approaching me, and she has this thing in her hand. Would you like to read this book over the school break? It's this business/leadership book. She wanted me to read it because she saw my ambitions, and she wanted me to gain as much value from this book as possible. So I accepted the offer, and I promised to get the book finished in 2 months. But there's a problem. I would always find it difficult to focus when reading. So this could very well ruin my reading experience, because I could read the entire book but not learn a single thing from it. So the school year ends, and I'm in my room, and I look over to the book she gave me, and I decide I want to read it. So I take the book and go outside. I sit on the grass, and I open the first page, and out of nowhere, I start to blank out. And before you know it, I just read through an entire paragraph without me realizing. So I reread the paragraph and continue as usual. And then it happens again. This would happen to me every time I read that book. And eventually I did actually manage to finish the book before the break ended. But the main issue is that I had gained barely anything from it. So go back to school and I return the book. What value did you gain out of the book? Did you enjoy it? She politely asks. I enjoyed it, and I noted some of them down in Notion. Luckily, I did have something to say about it, but imagine if I didn't. So what caused my mind to constantly blank out whenever I would read that book? Well, it's actually quite simple. Fast forward to 2024. I was getting sick of this focus problem because I wanted to read. So every day, I'll try out different techniques to figure out what the problem was. And eventually, I found out what I was doing wrong. To understand where this problem truly came from, we have to look at my schedule. Back then, my schedule would play out like this. I would wake up, shower, breakfast as usual. After that, I would scroll on my computer or my phone, and then I'd practice music for a few hours, do a home workout, eat dinner, then go to sleep. Can you spot the issue there? If you can't guess what the issue is, check it again and see what habits I was doing. So now can you guess what I was doing wrong? Not jacking off, you mong. I was scrolling in the morning. You're probably wondering, how does this affect my reading? Well, when you scroll in the morning, you end up abusing your dopamine receptors. But there's something very dark in particular with scrolling in the morning. You see, your brain is extremely fresh when you had just woken up. So when you do a bad habit after you wake up, the effects of the bad habit will snowball throughout the rest of the day. Which means yes, scrolling in the morning will cause you to have brain fry later in the day. Now you're probably scratching your head wondering, how do we eliminate this problem? Well, I made an entire video on how to eliminate your bad habits. However, there's something I left out in that video. You're going to keep these morning habits if you don't do this. So now that we've identified the problem, we're going to do this first step. You know how I said earlier that whatever you do in the morning translates throughout the rest of the day? Well, let me tell you a story. It's 9:20 p.m. and before I went to sleep, I prematurely set up my goals for tomorrow morning. So I go to sleep and then I'll wake up. I did what I would usually do, except when I woke up, I immediately went for my goals and I completed all of them. Now, because I had spent the entire morning productively, something interesting happened. The afternoon came around and I decided I wanted to read this entire historical text. It's over 600 pages long and it's very complex. I opened it up and read it. And usually you would expect me to blank out and have to reread certain paragraphs. But this time, instead of blanking out as usual, I was in a flow state and I read this thing for 20 minutes. And the value I gained from that 20-minute read was amazing. What did I do differently that day? Well, I woke up and instead of scrolling on my phone, I replaced that with full focus work. What this did is that first of all, it replaced my bad habits with an actual good habit. And second of all, focusing on your work further practices your cognition and makes it crystal clear. And because I did that in the morning, what that did is that it snowballed the positive effects throughout the entire day. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to set up goals for tomorrow morning. Maybe you're going to exercise tomorrow or do some work like what I did. When you prematurely set your goals for tomorrow, your brain is going to forget to scroll in the morning. But we're not done yet because that's not the only thing that gave me amazing flow state. You see, there's 2 things I left out of that schedule, and they are vital to this method. So let me ask you a question. Do you tend to experience brain fog, especially when reading? Well, I actually do something that completely reverses this. So one day, I was sitting in my room wondering what to do, and I thought that reading would be a good idea. I'd be gaining value while using my time. However, there was a massive problem in the way. I had brain fog. If I were to read, I would blank out constantly. So I decided to do something in response to this. this. I went outside, took my shoes off, and stood on the grass. And when I got back inside, my brain fog was completely gone. That habit is called grounding, and it is a perfect tool for when you want to remove your brain fog. Now that's the first habit. What about the second one? This habit is actually the best habit you can utilize to repair your focus. I do it every day, and every time I do it, I feel very present. And that habit is meditation. Okay, so now that we have our two habits, this is the most important part of the method. It really depends on where you place these habits in your day. So this is how we will place our habits. Meditation will be exclusively for the morning, okay? So that when we meditate, the effects of it snowball throughout the rest of the day. And then grounding, we'll do it twice. Once in the morning for the snowball effect, and another right before you read. So what we just did there is that instead of snowballing bad habits, we're now snowballing the effects of the good habits. This means that when it hits the afternoon, your cognition will be through the roof and you'll be prepared to read. Keep never quitting.